Senior experts in the hall, my dear industry colleagues and the organizers. A very good afternoon to all. And thank you so much for giving this opportunity to me to take you on a storytelling journey, right? Again, very much related and connected to the topic of optimization of IT landscape with least risk. So when you want to go on a journey, you want it to be with least risks. You do not want any kind of adventure, but at the same time you want the journey to be interesting. Let's say you take all of us are in Hyderabad, and let's say some of you are going to Delhi. When you take a flight, you want the flight to take off and then land. You do not want any adventure mid-air, right? Similarly, I want to take you on a storytelling session today where we talk about optimization. Let's first learn about the English meaning of optimization. What does it say? It's more of a process or a functional methodology which makes things fall in line and work perfectly well, right? That's what, and also make it as effective as possible. So that's more to do with optimization. Having said this, let's see the kind of challenges which are there in the industry. So the way I'm going to do this presentation is, let's look at what the challenges are and what is a proper solution to those challenges, to meet those challenges or beat those challenges. All of us know, as I said, we have senior experts in the hall. Most of you know that in 4 decades, innovation have been happening on its own pace, as and how demands in the industry has been coming up. We have been having wonderful presentations since yesterday which have been touching upon this aspect. So it has been giving incredible returns, but complexity has been has been creeping in on its own. Earlier we had one single browser, which was in the Internet Explorer, and one net connection. We could just go check Hotmail and come out. But now we have umpteen browsers, umpteen devices, and umpteen modes of getting connected. The other day I have a desktop at home which we don't use much. We use it to take printouts and all of that. It has Chrome, Google Chrome. When I opened it, it said this won't support Vista anymore. Try to upgrade your OS. So that's a kind of complexities we are looking at the simplest level of a home PC. We talk about real-time industrial landscape of IT. So as you can, it's evident from the slide that mainframes are there, modern technologies are there, both have to shake hands, both have to talk. Everyone wants to get the job done as easy as possible. So customers are facing a constant change, which is driven by the business needs which are there in the market, right? So it can be like being competitive. Even though whatever technology you're using, you're trying to be innovative and trying to be competitive at the same time. And efficiency is something which nobody is willing to get compromised on. Your end customers, your end users, they want whatever you are catering them has to be efficient. It can be having their services on a mobile phone. We had a lot of examples about Uber, and also Mr. Hirak Mukherjee was talking about what we have in future. That's again innovation, and at the same time being competitive as well. And effective, yeah, of course, with the right touch on the customer insight. Having understood all of this, who is the main hero in the story? It's the IT leader. A hero always comes with the responsibility of trying to balance things, right? So you have new businesses, time to market, being innovative, being competitive, all of that we spoke. At the same time, he has to see to it that the management is satisfied, their solutions and services are meeting the demand, and at the same time, innovation happens at the back end when you are delivering your services in the front end. Yeah, of course, performance cannot be compromised anywhere, right? So let's embark upon how a journey would start. Like how, as we have been telling our kids, we start a story with once upon a time, right? And in IT, what's once upon a time? Once upon a time was mainframes, right? Well, let's see a situation. Each and every, let's say this, most of you would have watched Darna Mana movie, right, which has 6 stories within that movie, my presentation is something like that. So I'm starting from the beginning. Mainframes. So what are the challenges? And all of this is today as we speak. It was not like what are the challenges of a mainframe in the past. That's not the case. What is it today? So anybody who has mainframes are very, very low on the skilled staff. People who have to operate mainframes. Costs are always shooting because they have to pay by the MIPS, right? Million instructions per second. How many MIPS they consume, they are charged based on that. And the risk, the sword of the risk is always dangling on the head. Comes with a lot of headache. What would be the right solution for people who are in this kind of a scenario, right? They have mainframes. What they would want to do is migrate their DevOps, at least development and testing. If it is done off the mainframe, then it saves the cost, right? You need not have to migrate your entire mainframe onto a newer platform, but at least the development and testing, which also consumes MIPS, if that is done onto a Linux or a Windows platform, that raises a lot of, answers a lot of questions and also takes care of the cost primarily. And also, yeah, time to migrate, if at all things are working out well in DevOps, then you can also think of migrating, which increases the productivity and brings down the cost along with the risks coming down, would result in a more happy and scenario. Just a little bit ahead, COBOL. Most of the applications are coded on COBOL. What would be a situation when you have COBOL applications running in an environment? What are the challenges which would be there? A kind of an interface which is very difficult to understand. This interface, only an expert knows how to do it. And these experts would have already become consultants, and they are entrepreneurs bringing in their own innovation in their business space and not available. So you cannot hire staff. That's one of the key challenges. Hiring people, if a staff has to be hired, then he has to, as the cartoon says there, more like a dragon has to be hired in order to do a COBOL coding. So what would be an ideal solution in this case? You're already there, stuck with COBOL. We have shipping companies, we have airline companies, we have insurance companies who are working still on COBOL application. But the staff who is working there would still love to work on COBOL application, but they face the challenges which we just discussed, right? So a screen which is very difficult to understand, make it more modernized IDE, more like a Java IDE, more like a Visual Studio IDE. That is something which even the younger crowd, which is coming freshly out from college, can work on. That would be ideal situation to work on Visual Studio and Eclipse, wherein the performance consistency is always growing, and then the skills within the organizations are available at the drop of a hat, right? You're hiring new people, making them do COBOL programming, fantastic for people who are there in a situation where COBOL is there, and also design new architecture, move the COBOL application to a mobile platform, and also put it onto the cloud. Right? This is the ask of the industry today, which everyone, I'm sure, would agree. That was the second part of the story. Terminal emulation. Right? What are the challenges? Let's take an example of an airline industry, wherein it can be people who's doing passenger reservation system, or what the picture says is the ATC, air traffic control. They're looking at a screen which looks like this, right? But they cannot move out of it because it's running. Moving out of it involves a lot of hassles, but they end up with these kind of challenges which you're seeing there, saying that the systems are pretty outdated, they're too efficient but difficult to handle, but you have to live with it. It becomes a necessary evil kind of a situation, even though it's hard on functionality. How would it be if you have a solution which actually makes the entire application run in the background as is, but has a new interface, a jazzy interface, a interface which is like more of working like on the modern day application like a Facebook, or it can be a net banking application. And similarly, if you can have a good interface, then that's how terminal emulation, a solution like terminal emulation would be very easy to work on either a Windows platform or a Linux platform, and also use a mobile interface to work on an application which is running at the back end. It can be again mainframes. So the end users can work on these applications from wherever they are at the ease which is available to them. Right? So that was the third part in the story. Coming a little bit into a modern world, right? From those decades, now we are coming into some decades where we can understand, let's say about 80s or 90s. Application lifecycle management or software development lifecycle and testing. What are the challenges what we see today? Everyone knows there's a back to front approach. When you take the SDLC, there's a back to front approach. Prominence is not given initially when the requirements are captured. Prominence is not given to testing. Prominence is given only to development. When does testing take prominence? One, when because in order to meet some certification, some compliance issues, that's when testing takes prominence. Other, when there is somebody yelling at the top of their voice saying that there are too many bugs, the UAT is not working, then they go back, right? So they are going back to front, and then they see that the requirement was not captured properly. This particular clipping, what you see here, I'm sure is very much familiar. I do not want to run on that, but what the customer says, what the business analyst captured, what he gave it to the developer, what developer developed, and what tester found out, there's entirely a different understanding. It's more like a Chinese whispers. I'm sure everyone knows the game Chinese whispers. You say something to the person sitting next to you who's sitting in a circle format. By the time it comes from the last person, it's something else. So that's more or less similar. That's what happens. So when you're trying to run a project, IT project, with this back to front approach, what do you have? You have a war room situation. Fingers are being pointed at others. The tester says the developer didn't do a good coding, the developer says design department didn't do a good blueprint, those guys say we didn't get good requirements, right? What solution would you have? Give respect to each and every phase in SDLC, in application lifecycle management. Requirements, define those requirements, with that do a good coding, and then do a good testing. If you do this, you're bringing down the scope of birth of defects in the very inception of the project. That's a key solution to the challenges which we have seen, right? So when you release the project, then you should be having a good software which you can deliver faster. That's very key, right? So what we saw, mainframes, COBOL, terminal emulation, we also saw a little bit in the modern era. This is all pre-production. What we just saw with regard to ALM and testing is pre-production. When we get into production, when we get into operations, what we have to lay emphasis on? Identity, access, and security, right? When we're talking about production, these are the three key words which I'm sure the experts who are there in the room would certainly, it does ring a bell. What are the challenges? A CIO or a CISO's nightmare. Paper policies and forms. When a new employee joins in, he's given a dossier to fill right from where he was born, his father was born, the family tree, everything, including his bank account. Sometimes they do miss out on the bank account also. When everybody is getting salary, he says, I didn't get salary. That's the time they try to dig out those papers. That's one of the nightmares what a CIO or a CISO would have. And access is getting delayed. That guy is sitting and reading newspapers since last 2 days because he's not being given access to the application on which he has to work, for which he is hired, right? And he also has no common identity across the organization. For HR application, he is Mr. A, and for some finance application, he is Mr. B, and the project on which he is working on, he is Mr. C. There's no single identity, right? And this is one of the key points, ghost account. People who have already quit and gone, they're still existing. Right? This is like the person has died, but he does not have a death certificate, so because of which he's still alive. Something like that, right? These days, compliance and governance is really, really key. People want to be proud of the kind of certifications they have got. We are SOX compliant, we have ISO certification, all of that. When the audit happens, they are pulled out by their throat, right? So that's one of the key challenges which is there, having ghost accounts. Yeah. So when a person who's reading newspaper since last 3 days, if a senior manager asks him, what are you doing, who are you? He says, sir, I was hired 3 days back, but I don't have an access. He says, okay, go to the help desk. He goes to the help desk, the guy says, I'm currently working on the laptop of the CEO, please come back to me after lunch. Right? The bandwidth of help desk is always choked. So this is a situation. We need solution to these. As we speak, I'm sure you would understand that we are staring at these kind of a situation, if not all, at least a bit of whatever I said so far. What is the solution? Have an identity-powered security, right? With which you're taking care of everything in one shot. You have identity, governance, and administration. A person will have a single identity. He is Mr. A everywhere across the company and across different projects. He is not different person. He has one single entity. And going across to the next one, access management and authentication. He uses one password. I'm sure when I say that, single sign-on is something which comes to your head. SIEM, all of those concepts tagged to a single identity of that particular person. And also user activity monitoring. When that person is given access, yeah, fine, he has an identity, he has a single password, good access management is happening. But user monitoring is also very, very important in order to see to it that the security aspects are taken care. Okay. Let's say you have a CRM application, a customer relationship management application like a salesforce.com. In that, if a particular sales guy is trying to take a backup of the entire customer database at 3 a.m. in the morning, the IT admin or a CISO or a CIO cannot be awake at 3 a.m. in the morning and trying to do a user monitoring. The system has to be such that it triggers an alarm saying that this user is trying to do something which is not right. Okay? But when you realize that user would be sleeping happily at home, somebody is trying to gain access using his credentials. That's where user monitoring is key. It's not that you blame the user all the time. There can be situations like this which have to be given very, very equal proportionate importance. Yeah, we're talking about a good happy situation to be in these kind of solutions, right? A collaboration and endpoint management in a particular organization. We talk about BIOD these days. People are asked to bring their own devices. It can be a laptop or it can be their own mobile phones. Yeah, and I also said paper policies are still the task of the day, and paper change hands. It can be previous salary slip which is there in a file. The HR person takes it and keeps it on her table and she goes for lunch. Okay, somebody in that department, they want to talk something to the HR department, they see the previous salary slip of the person who just joined today morning. There is no security of that data. We don't want that flying around, right? So what happens to the confidentiality which has to be maintained? Takes a major hit and can give rise to small problems which can grow on to become bigger problems. We also heard of Mr. Hirak Mukherjee talking about solutions like printing or the problems in printing. That leads to a lot of worrisome situation. Those are the challenges. What can be a good solution in this case? Entirety of collaboration and endpoint management under one single umbrella. If you have to do shopping for a wedding, you would like to go to a mall where everything is available, jewelry, clothes, shoes, everything is available, right? And if you have the caterer sitting out of that mall, you would be happy to cover that aspect there as well. So you have Similarly, you need to have an emailing system which syncs up with the calendar, a proper collaboration, an internal messenger utility. You do not have to depend on your staff talking on WhatsApp or using Google Talk. You do not want them to do that. An internal messenger which is secure, and also you can do sharing of files securely. We are talking about digitalization. When it is, most of the times it's only you're talking, but we are not putting them in practice, like the payslip being exposed example what I gave. So you need to have a collaboration and endpoint and network solution which can do a very good workspace management. This is a workspace, right? IT landscape is there in its place, but this is a workspace wherein you need to have entire solution under one umbrella. That leads to a happy workspace as well. Right. Deployment, where do we deploy these kind of solutions? Now these days we talk about open source, we talk about Linux. So what has to be that in this kind of a challenging situation? Which Linux distribution do you feel is the best? You have many things. Which one to take? Of course they are open source, but which is the best? Everyone wants the best and everyone wants it to be secure. Which one? So you need a solution which increases the uptime, very minimal downtime or rather no downtime, improve operational efficiencies, something which can be really very less complex and which will help you capitalize on the open source availability, right? Which enable you to deliver good services, demands to your end users and end customers who can rely on that and who are happy with the services which are provided. So COBOL development and mainframe modernization is something which can meet all of these challenges which we spoke initially, right, of having a mainframe application, DevOps, migration. That is taken care by COBOL development and mainframe modernization, where COBOL you can do programming with modern interfaces like Visual Studio and Eclipse. Element testing, one single solution where you can capture good requirements, create test cases out of it and do the testing when the development is happening parallelly. So application lifecycle management and a good testing portfolio. A solution like Roomba and Reflection which can make without any changes in the code, which can give you a new interface which is really jazzy. It is something which the users would love and relate and provides a lot of ease of use when the main application is running in the back end without nobody touching it or without anybody hampering with it. Identity, access and security along with workload migration and disaster recovery, one single solution. Let's say you want to move from physical servers to a cloud server, right? Everything is working fine, but only platform is what you need to change because the policy of the new CIO says that we have to move on cloud, right? Do a workload migration as is. Whatever it's there on the physical server, take it onto the cloud. That would be a wonderful situation wherein you have productivity up and running and without any loss of time and money. Right? Collaboration and networking we have already spoken about. Right? All of these solutions are provided by us, Micro Focus. We have Borland, Attachmate, NetAccess, right? So we joined hands in taking all of us together to reach the final destination successfully, on time and totally in control of the aspects in the IT landscape which we need to be completely taken care. In order to see that nothing goes off on control and everything is within the hand and happy people on both ends of the fence, this end of the fence and the other end of the fence as well, right? So I think I overshot by 5 minutes. That brings me to the end of the presentation. So do I have time for at least one question or no? So if anybody has a question, I would be